Hey everyone, I'm Scott Stokely, and this is going to be an incredibly useful putting video if you stick with it, because I'm going to be talking about a lot of important theory that will apply to your putt. But I'm going to frame it under, the fact that right now I'm trying to reinvent my putt mid-season. And I'm sorry for the noise. I'm in the middle of Augusta right now. I can't find a quiet location in Augusta. This town is popping. So I'm considering 3 putts, or I was considering 3 putts, but a 4th putt that I wasn't originally considering, I now seriously am looking at, and the early results are promising. But first off, the first 3 putts I was considering, I had to consider my original putt, who's to say there's a better one out there, which is just a basic spoosh putt, a little bit of elbow, a little bit of wrist, mostly shoulder, pop. I also am considering a traditional push putt, right foot forward, straight down the middle, elbow and wrist locked in place, all shoulder, pop. And I was also considering a 3rd putt, and that was a push putt with the left foot forward, which looks a little bit awkward, but there's pros and cons to putting a left foot forward, but everything else exactly the same. Shoulder is the only hinge used on the arm, elbow and wrist locked in place, straight down the pole, up the pole, pop. I was getting interesting results, and I'll be publishing all these results, but I was liking the push putt, but both of them were giving me problems. And that's where these putting theories come into play, because there's 2 really important things that I teach, philosophies of putting that I think are going to be with us, I think, 1,000 years from now. And they're very important to understanding the consideration for this 4th putting form, which it's starting to look pretty good. The first one is the single most important thing to consider when choosing your putting form, your putting stance, your putting grip, or your putter is consistency. Consistency trumps everything. If when you putt, I don't care what putter, stance, form, grip you use, if every time your hand stops in the middle of the chains and you release, if the disc goes in the middle of the chains, you've got your putt. Don't ever change a thing. However, if your hand stops in the middle of the chains on a 25-foot putt and the putt misses a foot left, if that putt misses the chains a foot left every single time, meaning it's consistent, don't change your putt. You got your putting form. Just follow through, aiming a foot to the right. If you get the same results every time, you can be an extremely good putter. This was my problem. I wasn't getting consistent results. Now, when it comes to putting form and putting stance, I believe that your body chooses your form and your body chooses your stance. You can't just line up in a way that you see a pro do. And I'm realizing that maybe I couldn't be in the exact stance and exact same form for the person I was emulating, which was me 20 years ago, or me not fatigued on tour with my arm dangling by its side. I was trying to force my form into a form that may not have been right for my body in this circumstance at this age. So the easiest example I can give for this, and this is really important to illustrate why, is that let's suppose, for example, you were doing a spin putt. Your wrist naturally sits right here. That's where your wrist naturally sits on your forearm, or your hand rests. That's the natural angle. That hinge is going to move this way every single time. Now you can tilt your wrist up and go back and forth. You can also tilt it down and go back and forth. You can do that. You'll never be consistent doing that. Because if you have a putt that involves your wrist not being in its natural motion, every single time you putt, you're having to force your wrist to stay there. It naturally wants to fall back to its natural position. On the other hand, if you're putting in its natural position, you can forget all about your wrist. It's going to stay there. That's the default setting. Well, you have your wrist, your elbow if you're a push or a spoosh putter, but you always have your shoulders, your hips, your knees, your ankles. Your body needs to move a certain way based on your own muscle mass, flexibility, injuries, scar tissue, the works. Your body needs to move fluidly for you to get consistent results. That's the first philosophy. That is key. That's why every stance is going to be different, but they can all be right while simultaneously all being different. The second rule I teach is that you always putt from your center. And the way I've always taught this is you have an imaginary line down the middle of your head, chest, stomach, down to the ground. That's your center line. That's where I'm rethinking this a little bit. I'm not contradicting it. I've taught this, I believe in it, but it's going to make sense in a minute. So the two push putts I was considering, one was a traditional right foot forward push putt. The disc goes down the pole and back up. That didn't feel good. Like when I'm putting this putt in a traditional push putt, a push putt, since you're not using the elbow and the wrist, shouldn't miss right or left. It should miss high or low, not right or left. It's like throwing horseshoes, right? I mean, you're going up and down with no hinge here, no hinge here. Yet I was missing right and left. And what that tells me is something in my shoulder or my hips or something wasn't moving fluidly in this position. Not a big deal. My second consideration was a left foot forward putt. And then you go down and straight up. Now, my body was moving more fluid when I lined up that direction. Left foot forward, straight down, straight up. The problem I was having was because I was only going down to this leg right here, I was having to jab at the putt. I mean, I really had a short distance to accelerate before I could get the disc up to speed. So both of those putts had promising results in some ways. The first push putt, you can swing a lot. You can go right between your legs. The second putt, my body was moving fluidly, but I was having to, it was jerky. So there's a third putt. Back in the early 80s, way back when beveled edge disc and the super puppy first came out, like we were inventing this stuff, different players would putt. They would putt a horseshoe putt, which is traditional stance, right side of the body, like Gwen Whitlock and Paul Harris. John Jewell, big favorite of mine when I was a kid, would putt left foot forward the way I'd been working on those little short putts. A putt that I was using way back then was a bowling putt, which is left foot forward, but I would swing the disc not to my back leg, but all the way back, just like I was bowling. And I got away from that putt to a large extent because nobody else was using it. And I kept thinking, could this possibly be right when none of the best players are doing it? Can't be right. So watching the DGP Tour at Texas State, Jake Hebenheimer was using that putt. He stepped into it, but he was using the bowling putt that I used way back when. And that inspired me to reconsider it. I said, someone else is using it. Someone else has the guts to go out there and say, hey, I know this isn't the most popular putt, but it works for me anyways. I don't care what you think. I don't care about your opinion. I'm making putts this way. I'm going to do it. So shout out to Jake. I am inspired by the fact that I saw someone else do this. And so I said, let me just incorporate this in. And I started putting that way. Along with the other three putts. Left foot forward, but a bowling putt. Now, here's the second reason I didn't consider that putt, and that was that not just does nobody, well, except for Jake, use this putt, consistently. I'm sure there's others, but he's the one that I got to see. But one of my rules is you have to putt from your center. Well, I was putting this putt, I was practicing. These putts started going in a lot, and so I shot some video of myself. And this is what I noticed. Watch this. I don't know if you noticed that. I was putting from my center. I always talk about this imaginary line, head, chest, stomach to the ground. But what's important is this line right here. It's your eyes. When I do this putt, I am leaning over the disc, and that disc is coming straight at my center. It's just that I'm leaning, so this part is not at my center, only my face is. And the best example of someone who's doing this with precision are billiards players. Billiards players that's more precise than darts. That's the most precise game in the world, I believe. Talking about millimeters to be good at billiards. And they're not shooting from their center of their body. They're leaning over the table. Doesn't matter as long as the stick is below here, right? Like right below the eye. Boom. So that made me think there is precedent in another sport for putting below your center, this being your center, and it not having to be your whole body, like a straddle putt, a push putt, like just any other putt. So all of a sudden, boom, light bulb went off. It's not violating the rule. It does not violate this thing that says you must putt from your center. And it's a stance that's working, where my body's working fluidly. Now, I'm not gonna post the results yet, but I'm tracking numbers on all these putts. I'm doing hundreds of putts every single day with 8 different models of disc, and I'll keep you guys in the loop. But I'm nervous because interesting results are coming in that I don't want. But if the data backs up something, I'm gonna go with it. So I hope this helps, because the philosophy, the theory behind the mechanics of putting, the center, body moving fluidly, consistency, none of it has changed. No matter what I change in my putt, I am keeping within the framework of the way I teach, because the way I teach is based on thousands and thousands of people when I teach this to are better. I am not going to go outside my overall philosophy, but within my philosophy, there's room for individual body types. There always is. And that's what I'm doing. I'm wiggling within the framework I've created on how to do this. And I'll be posting results as we go. Long video, but I think there's good stuff here. Thanks, everyone.